I never expected to hear my daughter speak back through the baby monitor, but there she was last night, answering questions that I did not ask. The room was dark, lit only by the soft glow of the monitor on the kitchen counter. I clutched the receiver, expecting to hear her usual sleepy coos or the occasional whimper if she was unsettled. Instead, a voice I did not recognize whispered a question, low and strange, and then her small, clear voice answered it. "Are you alone?" The unknown voice hissed through the static. I froze, my heart pounding as I stared at the monitor. "Yes," my daughter said softly, though she was supposed to be sound asleep in her crib upstairs. The hairs on my neck prickled. I knew no one else was home. My wife was on a night shift and wouldn't return until morning. The baby monitor only picked up sounds in her room. There should have been nothing but silence. A pause, then the voice spoke again, colder this time. "Do you want to play?" Her tiny answer came promptly, "Yes." I couldn't move. The cold sweat running down my back felt like ice in the summer. My hands shook as I reached for the stair railing, debating whether to rush upstairs or call my wife. But the voice resumed. "What is your name?" "My name is Lily," the girl said plainly. I swallowed hard. I had never heard Lily say her name on the monitor before. Usually she babbled nonsense or cried. This was too deliberate, too clear. A chill crawled up my spine as the realization hit me. Lily should have been asleep. I squeezed my eyes shut and shook my head, willing the sound to just stop. It didn't. Instead, the voice chuckled softly, a hollow, endless sound that made my blood run cold. "Are you scared?" it whispered. "Yes," Lily admitted, her voice almost hesitant for the first time. I bit my lip, suddenly desperate to see her. But the baby monitor showed nothing but darkness, the camera obscured somehow. I flipped it on and off, but the screen remained blank. I staggered toward the stairs, monitor in hand, my mind spinning in impossible circles. Why was this voice on the monitor? Who was it talking to? How did it get into the receiver? And more importantly, why was Lily answering questions that I didn't ask, in ways she never would? On the landing, I finally heard the creak of the nursery door opening. My heart leapt, expecting my daughter to be waiting there, giggling or asleep. Instead, the room was empty. The crib was empty. The monitor's glow shone on a single, cold, folded blanket. "Where are you?" I whispered, fear choking my voice. A sudden scratch echoed through the monitor, and the voice spoke once more, calm and sinister. "Right here with you." I stood frozen in the nursery doorway, the baby monitor still clutched in my hand, its tiny speaker crackling with that impossible voice. The room was empty, lifeless except for the folded blanket where Lily should have been. The silence pressed against my ears, broken only by my own ragged breathing. My mind insisted this was some kind of malfunction, some trick of the electronics. But deep down, I knew the truth was far worse. I carried the monitor with me as I moved through the house, scanning every corner, every closet, every darkened room. I checked the locks on every window and door. All of them sealed tight. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the dust, no breath on the cold glass. Nothing that could explain how the voice reached me. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice shaking as I activated the monitor again in my living room. The speaker hissed back softly, "I am here." There was no reply from Lily this time. Silence stretched unbearably long. I gripped the monitor tighter, fighting the urge to smash it against the wall. But before I could, the voice returned, now hushed and urgent, slipping through the fuzz like a ghost's breath. "Play with me." I whispered back, "What do you want?" A pause, then the voice answered, to be seen. Goosebumps rose across my skin. How could anyone outside this house hear the baby monitor? How could they speak directly to my daughter without me knowing? I paced the kitchen frantically, eyes darting toward every shadow. I ran upstairs again, checking every room, every dark corner. Lily's bedroom was as it had always been, except for the empty crib, the folded blanket stark against the sheets. Under the crib was a tiny set of footprints, damp and muddy. My daughter never crawled that far, she only just learned to sit. These prints led out the bedroom door and down the hall, but the hallway floor was spotless, no muddy footprints. I bent down, tracing invisible lines in the air where the dirt should have been. A cold, hollow feeling filled my chest. The footprints seemed to vanish into thin air. I swallowed hard, backing out into the hallway. Then the monitor crackled again, louder this time, shrill and angry. "You cannot hide from me." I flinched against the wall, terror freezing my blood. This voice wasn't just a sound, it was alive, moving in the house's bones. Impossible, yet undeniable. I ran to the basement door, heart hammering. The house was old, creaking from years of silent shadows, but never before had I felt it closing in. I flicked on the basement light. The stairs groaned underfoot as I descended into darkness. The baby monitor's speaker continued to drone that voice, now a whisper in the damp air, seeping from the very walls. She hears me, even when you can't. My breath fogged as I scanned the room. There was nothing but old boxes, some broken furniture, the smell of damp earth and dust. But then I saw it, a small, carved hole in the plaster behind the water heater, almost hidden in shadow. I knelt, trembling, peering inside. A faint light glowed from within, and through the crack I heard my daughter's voice, soft and distant, answering again. "Yes, I'm here." I recoiled with a strangled cry. My blood ran cold. She wasn't upstairs anymore. She was somewhere inside these walls, speaking through the monitor to whatever that thing was. I smashed the baby monitor against the concrete floor, shattering silence into sharp shards. But through the broken speaker, the voice whispered still, mocking. "You cannot silence me." And from behind the hole, a faint tapping sound began, steady and slow. 3 soft raps, then a whispered chilling closer than ever. "Come play." After smashing the baby monitor, I expected the nightmare to end. But instead, the silence became heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. I stood in the basement, heart pounding, ears straining for any sound beyond my own ragged breaths. The faint tapping behind the cracked wall persisted, deliberate and slow, echoing through the musty air. I backed away, hands shaking, and hurried upstairs. Every room I passed felt colder than the last, the shadows lengthening unnaturally despite the warm glow of the overhead lights. I moved silently from bedroom to bedroom, turning on every light, searching for anything, any sign that could explain the voice, that strange presence in my home. Lily's room was the first. The crib stood empty, the blanket folded neatly as if no one had disturbed it. The air smelled faintly of something metallic, like blood, though there was none to be found. I swiped my hand across the sheets, finding nothing but crisp fabric. I checked the adjacent bathrooms, running fingers along every faucet, every mirror hopping to catch a reflection or a distortion of something unseen. Nothing. But the whispers lingered in my ears, not from any device, but seeming to come from just outside my perception, the edges of my mind. The living room offered no respite. The television, unplugged, sat silent against the far wall. The old radio on the shelf was covered in dust, untouched. Even the cordless phone, which should have recorded any calls, showed no activity. Despite my thorough search, the feeling of being watched grew heavier, pressing in from every direction. At one moment, I would catch movement just beyond the corner of my eye, a flicker of shadow, a writhing darkness where light should have been. Each time I turned quickly, hopping to spot the source, there was nothing but the stillness of the house. In the kitchen, the baby monitor fragments lay scattered on the tile floor. I gathered them, piecing the device together as best I could, desperate to understand what fault had let the voice slip through. When I powered it on, the screen flickered weakly, static filling the speakers. Then, unmistakably, Lily's voice drifted through the crackling white noise. "Are you there?" I dropped the monitor, trembling. I steeled myself and whispered, "Where are you?" The reply was almost casual, like a child calling from the next room. "Here." That word sent a chill racing down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was Lily or something else speaking through that broken device. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, shadows crawling up from the corners to coat the walls. I clenched my fists and forced myself to check the other devices connected to the house. Cell phones, smart speakers, even the computer. Nothing showed any unusual activity. No calls, no messages, no unknown signals. Yet the voice persisted, slipping through the baby monitor or whispering softly against the static. I thought to call my wife, but when I reached for my phone, all the battery was suddenly drained. An impossible occurrence for a device fully charged just hours before. Panic mounted as the darkness deepened around me. Every step I took was met with a sensation of unseen eyes tracking me, intent and unblinking. The house no longer felt like home but a cage, closing in slowly with each breath. I retreated to the hallway, heart hammering as I glanced back toward Lily's room. The door, fully closed moments before, was slightly ajar now, a sliver of blackness spilling out like ink onto the carpet. I wanted to call her name to demand she come out, but my voice faltered. Instead, I edged closer, the air growing colder with every step. A faint whisper brushed past my ear, soft and urgent. "Don't be afraid." I spun around, searching wildly for the source, but found nothing. The silence swallowed me whole. On the monitor's faint screen, a single word blinked like a warning. "Wait." My pulse thundered in my ears as I realized I was no longer alone. Something had been waiting inside these walls, watching, whispering. And it wasn't finished with me yet. The house felt impossibly still, as if it was holding its breath along with me. I stood in the living room, gripping the cracked baby monitor tight in my hands, the faint glow of its now flickering screen the only source of light. I could still hear the soft whispers echoing in my mind, the weight of that voice pressing against my chest like a cold hand. But right now, something else caught my attention, a faint noise coming from the monitor's speaker. At first, it was barely audible, a soft scratching like nails brushing against wood. I stopped moving and held my breath, every muscle in my body taut with tension. The scratching persisted, growing louder and more deliberate. It wasn't random. It had a rhythm, like someone was trying to tap out a silent message from just beyond the edge of sensing. My eyes scanned the room, searching for any hint of movement, but nothing stirred. The walls stood silent and blank, the furniture unmoved and still. The scratching continued through the monitor's tiny speaker, scraping, intentional, as if whatever was there wanted me to hear. I pressed the monitor closer to the wall behind the couch where I'd set it earlier. The scratching grew faintly louder, sharper. I placed my hand flat against the drywall, feeling for vibrations beneath. The wall was cold and unyielding, but the noise came from somewhere inside it, or just beyond. I stepped back, heart hammering, and grabbed a flashlight from the nearby table. I aimed its narrow beam at the wall, searching desperately for cracks, holes, or anything unusual. The old house's plaster was rough and uneven, but nothing looked out of place. Still, the scratching persisted, a scratching that didn't belong. Squatting down, I traced the wall's surface with my hands, feeling for anything I might have missed. Then my fingers brushed against something, a tiny seam barely noticeable, running vertically near the corner behind the couch. My breath caught, and I pressed harder. The surface gave way slightly under my touch, as if paper-thin drywall had cracked free from the framing behind. I bit my lip and pushed gently, and a thin panel slid inward, revealing a narrow cavity dark as a tomb. The scratching stopped abruptly, as if whatever was there became aware that I had found it. I shined the flashlight into the cavity. Only shadows stared back at me, no shapes, no movement. But my skin prickled with cold certainty that something had been hiding there, listening, waiting. Suddenly, a soft thump echoed from deep inside the hollow. My heart jumped, and I stumbled backwards, nearly dropping the monitor and flashlight. The air thickened, cold and heavy, pressing against my face. Then I heard it, a faint, whispering voice, so low I barely caught the words. "Don't be afraid." My pulse roared in my ears. The voice was neither Lily's nor mine, but quiet and eerie, like an echo from another world. It came from inside the walls themselves, through the tiny crevice where I had pried open the panel. I caught my breath and tried to steady my shaking hands. How long had this thing been living in my house? How many nights had my daughter spoken to it through the monitor? I felt a sickening wave of dread sweep through me. This was no malfunction. It was something else, something alive, hidden in silence and darkness. I reached into the cavity, fingers trembling as I tried to feel for anything I could touch, any proof of life inside the walls. My hand barely passed beyond the edge when a chilling coldness burst through the opening, painful and sharp, like freezing water flooding my skin. I jerked back, gasping, the air thick with unnatural silence once again. The scratching resumed, faster this time, clawing and desperate as if trying to escape. The baby monitor flickered back to life on the floor beside me, the screen showing static swirling with shadows that seemed to twist just beyond clarity. And then I heard it clearly, my daughter's voice, soft and distant, coming again through the speaker. "Who's there?" The question hung in the silent room, and I knew I still had no answers. Only a terrible certainty that whatever was behind the walls was watching, waiting, and it knew I was here. The broken baby monitor lay forgotten on the floor, the faint glow from its cracked screen casting uneven shadows across the walls. I sat frozen in the corner of the living room, the flashlight's weak beam trembling in my hand. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, to escape this house that felt less like a home and more like a prison built around a secret watching me from the darkness. Suddenly, the silence shattered. The voice returned. But this time it was different, clearer, closer. "Do you remember the treehouse, Michael?" I flinched, heart racing. No one but me and my wife knew that name, that day, that place, the secret hideaway from my own childhood. How could this voice know? "I do," I whispered, trying to steady my breathing. There was a pause, like it was savoring my unease. "Tell me about it." I closed my eyes, stabbing memories surfacing in the darkness. The rough wooden planks, the faded blue paint peeling away under years of neglect, the secret meetings with friends long gone. I didn't say anything aloud, but the voice pressed on, more insistent. "Was Sarah there?" Her name caught in my throat. Sarah, my childhood friend, long dead. Only I knew the details of her disappearance, a secret locked away in shame and fear. "I don't want to talk about it," I said, voice barely audible. The voice chuckled softly, mirthless and hollow. Then it asked again, "Do you still blame yourself?" My breath hitched. No one had ever asked me that before. No one except the ghosts of my memories. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, voice cracking. The baby monitor hissed, the crackling static filling the room. Then the voice spoke, chilling and intimate. "I want to understand you, Michael, to be close." The room seemed to tilt, the walls bending inward. I struggled to keep my footing as a creeping chill spread through my body. "Why my daughter?" I asked, confusion and dread swirling inside me. There was a long silence, then the reply came, eerily tender. "Because she listens, because she answers." I swallowed hard, torn between terror and a sick curiosity. How could this thing know so much about me, about my past, about my fears? It continued. "Do you think she's safe?" The question pulled at me like a knife. Safe. I had no reason to believe so anymore. "No," I whispered. "And yet you let her sleep in this house," the voice said softly, almost mournfully. I felt tears sting my eyes, as the weight of words I hadn't spoken pressed down on me. "I don't have a choice." A sudden noise upstairs made me jerk my head toward the staircase, a soft, almost imperceptible creak. The house was silent beyond that, but I knew better now. Nothing here was as simple or as safe as it once seemed. The voice whispered again, drifting through the monitor's speaker like a shadow creeping closer. "Tell me about the scar on your left hand." My pulse hammered in my ears. No one else knew about that scar, not my wife, not my friends. It was a secret from a night burned into my memory, a violent mistake I tried to forget. I felt exposed, like the unseen presence in my home had peeled away layers of who I was, laying me bare. "I don't want to talk anymore," I said, voice rough with fear. The voice laughed then, a sound like dry leaves rustling in dead wind. "But you will." Suddenly the monitor sputtered, the screen exploding into static before going black. The room plunged into darkness, the only sound my ragged breathing. Then through the silence, a whisper so close I felt it in my ear. "She's waiting." And just like that, the line between friend and threat shattered forever. I hadn't slept a wink by the time midnight draped the house in shadows thicker than ever. Every creak and sigh of the old floorboards became a shout in my ears. I sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the baby monitor's screen. The broken device flickered weakly, but I refused to shut it off. This time I was determined to catch whatever was haunting my daughter and the quiet corners of this house. The house was dead silent except for the slow drip of water somewhere in the kitchen. I checked every room with my flashlight, feeling the air grow heavier with each sweep. Nothing moved, yet I felt a presence, like eyes boring into the back of my neck. On the monitor, the grainy picture danced with static. A faint shimmer flickered near the nursery door. I leaned close, my breath fogged the screen. Something was there, or maybe it was. The outline disappeared, a shadow melting into the wall. Then from the speakers, a soft gasp, Lily's voice. It was fragile and distant, barely more than a breath. "Daddy." I whipped my head upstairs. The nursery was dark, the door slightly cracked. "Lily," I called, voice hoarse and shaking. No answer. I clicked on the baby monitor's recording function, hopping to capture everything, every sound, every shadow. Minutes passed, then the voice returned, low, distant, dripping with cold amusement. "Do you see me?" Static crackled, and the movement on the screen grew sharper. A blurred figure packing just beyond the crib, just out of reach of the camera's narrow lens. My fingers tightened on the flashlight, heart thundering. I strained my ears as something else began, a slow scraping, like nails dragging along wood, soft and deliberate. I turned off my flashlight, plunging the room into deeper darkness. The scraping moved closer, from the hallway toward the nursery door. The baby monitor hissed, the voice slithering through. "Let me in." My mouth went dry. I swallowed hard, reached for the hallway light, but it wouldn't turn on. The bulb was dead. I switched the flashlight back on, shining its beam down the hall. Nothing, but the scratching stopped abruptly. I crept forward, every step heavy with dread. The nursery door stood just ahead, slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was empty, the crib, the blanket, the silence. I spun around, and the baby monitor slipped from my hand, smashing on the floor. As I bent to retrieve the pieces, a soft whisper brushed past my ear. "Don't be afraid, Daddy." I froze. No sound came from the monitor. This was real. Someone, something was here with me. Suddenly, from the corner of the room, a flicker caught my eye. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing the nursery window, open wide, despite being locked earlier. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it a faint scent of earth and decay. I followed the trail from the window to the floor. There, scrawled in the dust, were tiny handprints leading toward the closet. My heart hammered in my chest. I approached the closet door slowly, reaching out with trembling hands. Before I could touch the handle, the baby monitor, still unattended on the floor, crackled one final time. "Come play." A sudden bang echoed from inside the closet, like something heavy falling. I yanked the door open, flashlight stabbing inside. "Empty." But the scratching started again, right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Only the dark. Then I heard it, a low, gurgling laugh, close enough to breathe down my neck. I didn't dare look back. The nursery door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped with the watcher watching, and the shadows closing in. And above it all, Lily's voice, distant and faint, calling through the broken baby monitor. "Daddy." The night stretched endlessly, a suffocating darkness wrapping around me as I clutched what remained of the broken baby monitor. The voice was no longer content with whispers or distant questions. It had crossed a line, crossed boundaries I wasn't ready to face. Through the crackling speaker, it spoke to Lily in a language that warped my mind. The first time I heard it, she was laughing, a high, eerie sound that didn't belong to the innocent girl I knew. And then the monitor pulsed with a series of sounds, neither words nor cries, but something more, tones that vibrated deep in my chest. I tried to block it out, but the patterns repeated, hypnotic and cruel. "Lily," I called, voice raw and trembling. "Are you okay?" There was no answer, only those twisted sounds flowing through the static. Then the voice came, speaking through my daughter's voice, a sick imitation. "Daddy, play with me, forever." I dropped the monitor, my hands shaking violently as cold dread filled the room. Later, I managed to calm Lily down, wrapping her in my arms as she shivered. But I knew the truth. Something had marked her. That thing had reached inside her mind, twisting her voice, blurring where she ended and it began. The next night, I sat beside her crib, eyes never leaving her pale face. She babbled softly, repeating strange words I didn't understand. The baby monitor crackled with the voice again, speaking directly to me now. "Do you want to see?" I swallowed hard, dread crawling up my throat. A flicker in the monitor's screen showed a glimpse of a shape behind Lily, a twisted silhouette, impossibly tall and thin, with eyes that gleamed like dying embers. I blinked, but when I looked again, it was gone. The entity's hold on Lily deepened. She started answering questions I hadn't asked, speaking knowledge beyond her age, a knowledge that chilled me to my core. "Why do you want her?" I demanded one night, voice breaking. Through the monitor's crackling, the voice answered calmly. "Because she remembers, because she can see." Lily's face tilted toward the monitor, eyes glassy and wide. "I see," she whispered. That word echoed through me like a warning. In the days that followed, the boundary between my daughter and the entity blurred further. The voice began speaking not only through the monitor but from other places, the wind outside, the creaking floorboards, even the static from the television. It asked questions only I could answer, secrets buried deep within me, the ones I had locked away. You don't believe in me, it said once through the monitor, but you always will. One night I awoke to Lily's voice, clear and unfiltered, calling to me from the monitor. Daddy, come closer. I stumbled upstairs, drawn by a force I could not resist. Her room was empty. The crib was bare except for the folded blanket, but the monitor crackled in my hand, the voice louder now. Don't be afraid, I want to show you. Suddenly the air grew cold, and the walls seemed to breathe, pulsing around me. I felt hands, warm and cold, brush against my skin, tugging, pulling me toward the shadows behind the crib. Lily's voice spoke again, soft and strange, as if from far away. Come see Daddy, come inside. I wanted to run, to escape this house, this nightmare, but a twisted part of me wanted to understand what had crossed into our world, what had crossed over through my daughter. The baby monitor's screen flickered violently, showing images I could barely comprehend. Faces twisted in silence, eyes wide in terror, and a doorway leading nowhere but darkness. And then the voice whispered in my ear. You belong here with us. The room plunged into darkness, the monitor falling silent. But Lily's voice lingered, faint and distant. Daddy, don't leave me. And I realized then the boundaries were gone. They had fallen away, and everything I thought was real had shattered. The question no longer was whether I could save her, but whether I still had a choice. The house had sunk into a heavy silence, but the weight in the air pressed down harder than ever. I sat alone in the dark, the shattered baby monitor's pieces scattered around me like broken promises. My mind reeled, desperate for answers, for something, anything, to explain the horrors that had unfolded. And then in the rubble of my fear, I found it, the first thread of a terrifying truth. It started with the notebook I'd kept hidden on a high shelf, long forgotten. I reached for it on a whim, fingers trembling as I pulled the dusty leather cover free from the stack of old books. Inside, the pages were filled with my handwriting, my own thoughts, memories, confessions I had buried deep. Flipping through, I came across a passage I hadn't read in years, written after a night that had nearly destroyed me. I had documented a terrifying experience from my childhood, a shadow that lived inside me, a darkness I'd never spoken about. The words were chillingly familiar, almost matching the voice on the monitor. I am the part that watches, waiting in silence, the part that remembers what you have tried to forget, the part you fear. My breath caught. Could it be? That voice, the entity that spoke to Lily and me, was born from something inside me, a fractured piece of my own mind, twisted and unleashed. I searched the rest of the notebook, finding other troubling fragments. Strange drawings of shadows, cryptic symbols, a child's trembling hand intertwined with darkness. Names I barely recognized, memories I had blocked away, painful, violent moments I had never told anyone, not even my wife. In one passage, I wrote about a voice that whispered to me at night, seductive and cruel, promising power but demanding sacrifice. I had believed it was a nightmare then. Now the lines between nightmare and reality blurred terrifyingly. The realization hammered through me. This thing was not a stranger in my home. It was part of me reaching out from the depths of my own fractured soul. The entity had found its way through the baby monitor to Lily, not random but deliberate. It sought connection, carrying my darkest secrets in its grasp. I stood and paced, trying to make sense of what this meant. Had I somehow passed this darkness onto my daughter? Was she the next vessel? Or worse, had I invited it in by ignoring the shadows I carried inside? The air grew thick and cold. From the corner of the room, the broken monitor flickered weakly, the static warping into a shape, a reflection. I approached cautiously, heart pounding. In the screen's distortion, I saw not Lily's innocent face, but mine, twisted, hollow-eyed, staring back with something unplaceable. A voice, stark and intimate, echoed through the stillness. Do you see me now? I staggered back. It wasn't just inside me. It was a part of me, and it had been watching all along, waiting patiently. The past, the darkness, the fears I fought to hide, they weren't gone. They had only been waiting for the right moment to claim me completely. The monitor's speaker hissed again. She is yours, and I am you. Fear twisted into cold clarity. The entity's reach was deeper than I could bear. It was not only haunting my daughter, it was a mirror of my own fractured mind, a memory I had never truly escaped. The room seemed to close in as I realized the true horror. I was both the hunter and the hunted. The voice was the darkness inside me, speaking through the fragile barrier of sanity, reaching out to claim my family and my soul. And as the flickering reflection smiled back at me from the broken monitor, I whispered, trembling, "I don't know how to fight you." The voice answered, soft and deadly, "But I know how to win." I stared at the baby monitor's shattered screen, the fading glow revealing the twisted reflection that wasn't quite mine, yet painfully familiar. The air was thick enough to cut through, heavy with a darkness I no longer fought to ignore. The voice, the whispers, the impossible conversations with Lily, they had all been coming from me. Or rather, the part of me I wanted to bury deeper than memory dared reach. I thought back to the first time the voice spoke through the monitor, to the gentle questions whispered in that impossible tone. At first, I'd believed it was some outside force, something sinister creeping into my home. But now I understood the truth. It wasn't outside at all. It had always been inside my mind, twisted and splintered by pain and regret. I sank onto the creaky old couch, clutching what remained of the monitor like a lifeline and a curse all at once. The voice spoke again, slow and deliberate, as if savoring my desperation. "Do you remember, Michael?" it said, using my name like a blade. I swallowed hard, nodding even though no one else was there. This was the monster I'd been running from, my own fractured self, lost in the darkness that had haunted me since childhood. I thought about Lily, my daughter, innocent and bright, caught in the crossfire of my mind's battle. The voice had chosen her carefully, speaking through her, bending her words and twisting her thoughts. I hated myself for letting that happen, for letting this part of me reach out and touch her. "Why are you doing this?" I asked aloud, voice cracking. The reflection in the flickering screen twisted into a cruel smile. "Because I am what you hide. I am what you fear becoming. I am the parent within." The words echoed around me, chilling and unstoppable. The entity wasn't just a voice or a shadow, it was the embodiment of my own darkness. The guilt, anger, and pain I had buried under layers of denial and silence. I had tried to be strong to protect my family, but instead I had let this fragment grow unchecked, feeding on my fears and regrets. It whispered to Lily through the baby monitor because it knew she was the part of me untouched, pure, unbroken, and it wanted in. Tears welled in my eyes as the weight of the truth crushed down. I had been fighting myself all along. "Can I stop this?" I whispered, desperation clutching my throat. The entity's voice softened, almost sad. "You can try, but I am inside you, always." I closed my eyes, the room spinning as the pieces fell into place. The sleepless nights, the scratching behind the walls, the impossible answers from my daughter, all signs of a battle I had never fully understood. I realized then that the fight wasn't just for Lily's safety, it was for my own soul. The baby monitor crackled, barely audible now. "Will you join me, Michael, or will you fight?" I opened my eyes, staring into the darkness, knowing the answer was mine alone to choose. But before I could speak, a quiet, familiar voice called from upstairs, the voice of my daughter. "Daddy." And in that single word was hope, fear, and the terrifying truth that the parent within was watching, waiting, ready to cross the final line. The house had fallen into a silence heavier than any before, but the quiet felt unnatural, as if the shadows themselves were holding secrets just beyond my grasp. I sat in the dark living room, the remnants of the baby monitor flickering softly on the table. Its broken screen pulsed with static, shadows swirling inside like smoke trapped in glass. The voices that had chased me for weeks now seemed endless, each whisper scraping at the edges of my sanity. I tried desperately to grasp what was real and what belonged to the fractured depths of my mind. Lily's voice was there, sometimes clear, sometimes distant, always a fragile tether to something I wanted to believe was pure and untouched. But the entity's voice twisted her words, made them unfamiliar, like a mirror cracked and rearranged. I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, but the hall was empty. The baby monitor crackled, faint but unmistakable. "Daddy," it called, soft and chilling, "we are here." I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. The line between what I was hearing and what my own mind whispering began to blur. Was the voice outside me, or had it always been inside? Was the entity some dark force invading my home, or my own fractured self reaching past the limits of reason? I stood, packing the room like a man trying to outrun himself. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows lengthening, breathing. Every corner held a secret, every silence threatened to shatter. I could feel the presence lingering, watching, waiting. Upstairs, Lily's room remained dark. The crib was empty, the soft blanket folded precisely. I called her name into the void, but only the echo of my own voice answered back. Suddenly, the broken monitor sputtered to life, static swallowing the room in white noise before a low, hollow laugh spilled through. "Lily," the voice whispered, "come play." A cold dread wrapped around my chest, squeezing tighter with every breath. I realized I wasn't sure anymore if the words came from my daughter or from something far older, tangled within my own mind. I sank to the floor, the fragmented pieces of the monitor scattered around me like shards of my own reality. The room seemed to pulse with a low hum, voices overlapping, soft whispers, urgent demands, quiet pleas, all woven together in a maddening tapestry. "Don't be afraid," one voice cooed. "Stay with me," another pleaded. "Listen," the entity hissed, "we are endless." I tried to speak, to break the cycle, but my voice dissolved into the noise. From the monitor, a faint giggle floated through, Lily's, or a dark mimicry, I couldn't tell. A sudden crash came from upstairs, the sound of something heavy thrown or a door slammed with force. I stood and moved toward the staircase, every step shaky but determined. As I climbed, the voices grew louder, no longer confined to the monitor but echoing in my ears, inside my skull, pounding with relentless insistence. At the nursery door, I paused. The darkness beyond seemed to writhe, alive and watching. The monitor on the floor blinked on one last time, the shattered screen flickering, revealing a twisted figure, shadows where eyes should have been, a distorted smile that stretched impossibly wide. The voice spoke one final time, clear and chilling. "Forever with you." I reached for the door handle, heart hammering, breath shallow. But the line between me, the entity, and my daughter had already dissolved. And in that moment, all I knew was that the voices would never end.